Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of One Bottle Each, where my guest and I each bring a bottle to the party to taste. My guest today is Jeff Kralik, better known online as the Drunken Cyclist. Welcome, Jeff, and thank you for being here.
Well, thanks. I'm really happy to be here. I watched the first episode just earlier today, and it's a really exciting format and a great idea by you. So hopefully it'll catch on.
I hope so, too. So tell me a bit about your online persona, the Drunken Cyclist, how you came up with that, how you started writing about wine.
Well, I get a lot of questions about the name. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but when talking to wineries, people will often say stuff like, "Well, we don't promote riding your bike and drinking," and then I try to say something off the cuff like, "Well, I was going to name my blog The Guy Who Rides His Bike Really Hard in the Morning so that by nighttime he doesn't feel guilty having a glass or two of wine," but that URL was already taken. And
Oh, that's a
sometimes they
shame.
laugh, but most of the time they look at me like, "Huh?"
Did you try .net?
.us, or maybe I should have been Canadian. Maybe it's available in Canada. But I used to be a cycling tour guide in France or in Europe. And one of the big things about being a tour guide is the culture. And a big thing about culture in France, as you might imagine, is the wine. And at the time that I started, I knew virtually, this is the early 90s, I knew virtually nothing about it. And I got some really good advice from the owner of the company, who's now still a really good friend. And he said, just choose one region, learn it up and down, and then take that region and then expand it to other regions, what you learn in that. So I chose, coincidentally, Champagne, which to me today is still my favorite region and favorite style of wine. But it was good because the owner of the company, who knows just about everything, didn't know hardly anything about Champagne. So he let me kind of be, and he didn't correct me all the time. And from there, I went to Burgundy, and then to some of the other regions. I went to Loire Valley, Provence, Alsace. So that's where I started my wine appreciation. And so when I was thinking of a name, for a long time I wanted to write about wine, but I couldn't think of a blog name. So finally I just said, just come up with something, start writing, and you can always change it. Well, I did that. I started writing, and then I thought about changing it. People said, "You can't change it. That's who you are now. You got to live with it." So I don't know how good any of that advice was, but that's how I got here, so to speak.
Great. Yeah, it'd be difficult to change because you are both well known and perhaps notorious, and I mean that in a good way. Eh,
Should I say thank you to that? I'm not sure.
It's up to you. Take that as you will. And so, no surprise then, based on what you just said, that you chose a French wine for us to taste tonight.
Yeah, it's kind of funny though, because of all the regions in France that I led bike tours in, we didn't have a trip to the Rhone. There were no trips to the Rhone Valley, so I'd never been to the Rhone Valley. The other trip that I never did was our trip in Bordeaux, which there was a trip to Bordeaux, but I always joked I wasn't allowed to go there because I was trained on Champagne, Burgundy, Loire Valley, Alsace, Switzerland. And so I always did those. And then when they hired a new tour guide, they would train him or her on the Bordelais region. So I never got to go to Bordeaux as a tour
Plus,
guide.
no room for Bordeaux Riedel glasses on the back of that bike with all those other glasses back there.
That's right. It's a challenging gig.
So,
So the wine that I have is Chateau Lannert. So it's a good buddy of mine. It's kind of a long story, but a good buddy of mine. Well, it's turned out to be a good buddy of mine. Back when I was living in Philadelphia a few years ago, the representative from the importer of Chateau Lannert called me up and said, "Do you want to come up to New York and meet the export manager for Chateau Lannert?" I said, "Sure." It was bitterly cold February afternoon, and we met. And his name is Christophe Bristiel, and he's a cyclist, although he's an absolutely insane kind of guy. But we sat there at lunch for 3 hours, and one of the wines that he shared was this Chateau Lannert White. So Chateauneuf Blanc. So it's I'm gonna have to. It's 43%. 43%. 42% Grenache Blanc, 41% Roussanne, 12% Claret, and 5% Bourbon Blanc. So there's only about 5% of the wines created in Chateauneuf are white. But at La Nerte, it's closer to 15%. And I think it's an absolutely stunning bottle of wine. One of the times that the first time I was introduced, I think it was the first time I was introduced to white Chateauneuf, I was actually on one of bike trips, and had to go down to the south of France and pick up a bunch of bikes in a van near Nice and drive across the country to the west coast of France, to near Biarritz, so on the coast. It was actually Saint-Jean-de-Luz. And so I made a little detour to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And I remember I got there right at lunch, and I debated having a glass with lunch because I was driving for 12, 14 hours. But I had a glass of white Chateauneuf, and I was just blown away. I think, for good reason, a lot of people love Chateauneuf Rouge, Chateauneuf Red, but I think Chateauneuf White is a notch above the Chateauneuf Rouge.
I will tell you, this is my first time having this bottle. What I'm impressed with is the finesse and lightness on the palate, but with such depth of flavor and length on it. Aromatically, flavor-wise, finish, it's a very impressive bottle of wine, and but that lightness that just sort of glides on the tongue is really what's hooking me in.
Yeah, to me, it's really, I mean, it's a wine for people who don't think they like Chardonnay to try, because I think it hits a lot of those boxes that Chardonnay will hit, but it doesn't have, but it's different. And I think you're right. It's just one of the most complete wines right out of the bottle that I can remember drinking. And so I got really excited when Christophe said, "Oh yeah, sure." So it's also kind of bittersweet for me because right now, Christophe, my buddy, we were supposed to be riding our own little Tour de France. The Tour de France started on Saturday, and we were to start riding from Lyon. So the winery is owned by a family called the Richard family, and they own about, I think it's 9 wineries in France. There's a couple in Beaujolais, 2 or 3 in the Rhone Valley, and then 3 in Bordeaux. And so we had planned this route to go from Lyon down to the Beaujolais to visit those 2 wineries, then down to Chateauneuf, spend a couple nights there, and then cross the country all by bike, and then visit the 3 Bordeaux regions. So tomorrow I'm meeting up in a similar format with Christophe. He's going to be at Chateau Lannert, and we're going to taste through the Chateau Lannert wines tomorrow. So it's bittersweet. I mean, I love Christophe, I love the wines, but I also love riding my bike in France. So
of course, yeah, that is bittersweet. Well, hopefully, a few months or early next year or something, you can take care of that and go back and do that. Jeff, do you know what the retail is on this wine in the U.S.?
Yeah, the retail, it's available at wine.com, among other places. It's at wine.com, it's $60. Okay. So it's not an everyday bottle for most of us. But it's certainly something you can lay down for a while. Chateauneuf White ages particularly well, particularly in good years. 18 was a decent year. It wasn't the best year in Chateauneuf, but it was a good year. I have a bottle of 11 that Christophe brought the last time he visited here in Houston, and it's one of those things I'm itching to open, but he says, no, just keep it. So
keep it for a while, yeah.
Hold onto for a while.
I will say that, yeah, it's $60, like you said, is not everyday drinking for most people, but it's certainly worth every penny of that. We've both had plenty of bottles that sell for $60 that we probably wouldn't want to pay 20 for. So this one for $60 is, I think, more than a solid value. It gives you more than $60 worth of wine there. Really
Yeah,
love
I think it really is fantastic. And I've said a lot in my journey through wine that red wine is kind of easy to make because there's a lot of ways you can mask it. You can throw some oak on it. You can make it ultra ripe, or, there's different ways but white, you're kind of limited in a certain way. And it really shows the fruit, I think, a little bit better, and the winemaker and the terroir a lot more clearly, I think, than most red wines do.
I think that's fair. But I think that's certainly a fair point, and I think this one surely does. Really good. So
yeah, if any of you out there ever get a chance to go to Chateauneuf, Chateau-Lannert is a beautiful property. It's one of the oldest in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. It was the first records are from 1560, and it's been shipping wines to the U.S. just about as long. It's a beautiful 18th century chateau there on the property. They have a great cellar down beneath, all kinds of, wines going back, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And Christophe is a great host, so he would love to see you there.
I'm gonna have to put that on my short list for my next trip out there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. He's a crazy guy, but he's a lot of fun. And so when I say crazy, he once rented a bike in Marseille, which is in the south of France. Rented a city bike. So you've been to New York, you've seen those city bikes, similar thing, 60 pounds, 3 speeds. He rode it from the old port in Marseille to the top of Mount Ventoux, which took him about, I think he said it was about 20 hours to ride. I've ridden Mount Ventoux once on a racing bike, and it was the most miserable day I've ever spent in my life on a bike. I'm not even kidding.
I believe you. Yeah.
I contemplated killing a few people to steal food from them in a water bottle. I almost picked up smoking just because I thought it would help.
How many people did you actually kill?
Only me.
Only yourself. All right. Well,
and
fair
a
enough.
a real good buddy of mine, who used to race in the Tour de France and all that kind of stuff. He said there were 3 things that he never wanted to do once he retired from cycling. One was to ride in the rain. The second one was to pin on a number, the number on his jersey. And the third one was to ride up Mont Ventoux. He said he won't do any of those 3 things ever again. So this guy did it on a city bike, all the way to the top. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. Sounds like my kind of cat.
He's a good dude. He's really good.
Good to know, man. So let's hop on the metaphorical plane and head out to Napa Valley. The wine I selected is from ZD. They're a stalwart Napa Valley producer, for those of you who don't know them, that are predominantly known for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Most of the other things they make are in smaller quantities. Those are the 2 that are largely distributed. This Sauvignon Blanc is the first wine that they've added to their main portfolio of distributed wines since the mid-90s. It is fermented in stainless steel, concrete, and neutral oak. And ZD celebrated, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, their 50th anniversary. Kind of a little bit under the radar in a way. They're a known brand, but they're not the most household of names. But I've really enjoyed their wines, and much like for you, France is where you cut your teeth on wine. For me, it was Napa Valley, and then Sonoma soon afterwards. But certainly Napa came first for me, and I still love to taste anything I can get my hands on from Napa. So, and with that, we've got this SB.
Yeah. Really nice. The thing that always gets me when I taste a good Napa Sauvignon Blanc, though, I get a little angry because it's getting ripped out and replaced by Cabernet. And
everything has been ripped out and replaced by Cabernet, seemingly.
Which I understand the economics of it, but
sure.
a really good Napa Sauvignon Blanc like this is really a delight. And there's only, the numbers are dwindling. So when you sent this to me and I saw that it was a first release, I was excited because hopefully that Do they grow this on their property, do you know, or do they source the fruit?
I believe it's a state. I'll have to check on that. I'm not sure.
But anybody that's going to promote and maintain Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc is a winner in my book. I mean, to be honest, Sauvignon Blanc is not my go-to variety, but because most of it I think is overcropped and not done very well.
Yeah. So
and going back to my, Sancerre is kind of my benchmark, and anything that comes close to a Sancerre, I mean, in that same kind of genre is gangbusters to me. So
yeah, I hear you. It's interesting. Sauvignon Blanc also not my top variety either. What I find with them is I almost never hate them. I almost never love them. Most of them are fine. And so they don't necessarily always inspire a lot of passion for me. But this one, my first time tasting it as well, and it's really impressive. It's got a richness to it.
Yeah, I think that egg and oak barrel treatment really do this.
Yeah, and it doesn't have that ostentatious nose that some SBs have that are either super full of fruit or full of grass. It doesn't have either of that. It's very very down the middle in terms of the aromatics are subtle, but they're there, and the palate is rich and it's got a nice finish.
Right. It's when a lot of people think of Sauvignon Blanc, they think New Zealand, and this is as far from New Zealand, I think, as you can get and still be a Sauvignon Blanc. It's not jumping out of you and kind of ripping at your nose hairs with the aromatics. It's subtle. But there's definitely fruit there. It's not a lifeless.
No, not at all.
At all. I mean, I think it's gorgeous. I really.
It has an elegance to it. And while it probably won't age as long as the Rhone we just tasted, I do think this will improve in the next handful of years and probably drink well for 7 to 8.
Yeah, what's the retail on this? I didn't check.
It's $27.
Oh, that's a steal.
I think for that level of quality, of course, the other ones we're talking about often are much lower than that, but you're not getting this level of quality at $15.
Well, and that's one of the tough things about Sauvignon Blanc, right? If you have it, no one's going to pay $50 for a Sauvignon Blanc, right? I mean, because it's priced at under $20 is where you see a lot of Sauvignon Blancs, and that's where a lot of people drink. It's similar to me is the rosé market, right? Above $25, people kind of raise an eyebrow and think, what are you trying to do with that? But, a well-made wine like this one, I'm really a big fan. And at $27.
And you got to figure 27's SRP,
right?
On the shelf, it's going to be a couple bucks less than that if you shop around, I'm sure. ZD's got good distribution. They made 2,000 some cases of this. So yeah. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you.
No, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. Good to see you virtually. I look forward to the day that, I said the same to Frank on episode 1, that we can, clink our real glasses together. But for now, thank you.